Okay, we are going to look at starting our second part of Unit 5. Unit 5B, we're going to do notes on what is the GCF and grouping. So we're going to start off by just reviewing how do we multiply. We did this towards the end of the chapter last time, distributing. So you multiply your whole numbers, and you add your exponents. So 4 times 8 is 32. There's 2 x's here and 1 x here, so that makes x to the third. That would be 3 x's. Bring down your plus sign. 4 times 5 is 20. This one has an x squared, and this one has a y. Okay. The next one also has multiple letters in it. We're going to distribute, which means multiply. So 7 times 2 gives us 14. And then if you look at the letters, this is a 1a there, and there's 2 here. So that would make a to the third, b to the third. Okay? Now I'm going to take the 7 and multiply it times the thing after the minus sign. So that would be minus 21. Again, this is a 1 and this is a 1. So that makes a to the second, b to the fourth. Now we're going to take the 7 and multiply it to the term with the 6. 7 times 6 is positive 42. A, because there's only one A, but we have 3 B's here and 2 B's there, so a total of 5 B's. So just watch. Remember to add your exponents when you distribute and multiply the whole numbers. So as just a review, today what we're going to be doing is they're going to give you a big problem like this, and you're going to work backwards, and we're going to learn, okay, what can they all be divided by? What do they all have in common if they all have the same letters? So our answers are going to look like the parentheses things, and today our problems look like the big ones. So find the GCF. GCF stands for greatest common factor. The largest number each is divisible by. So what number can both these be divided by? So some people make like lists, like 10. Well, 1 times 10, 1 and 10, or 2 times 5. Those are the only things that multiply to give us 10. The things that multiply to give you 25, these are called like the factors. You could have 1 and 25, or 5 and 5. Those are all the factors of 25. Then you look, okay, what's the biggest one that falls in both categories? It looks like 5 is in this one, and 5 is in this one. So 5 is their greatest common factor. That means they can both be divided by 5 and nothing bigger. So 18. Let's look at the list for 18. It's a lot. We have 1 times 18, so 1 and 18. 2 times 9. 3 times 6. 4 and 5 don't go into it. Okay, so let's look at our list of factors of 27. If you don't know what factors are, you just do 27 divided by 1. 27 divided by 2. So 1 times 27. 2 doesn't go into it evenly. It's a decimal. So 3 does. 3 times 9 is 27. 4, 5, 6. I don't think any of those will go into that. So that is a total list of things that multiply to 27. So we're going to look at the red list and the black list, and we're going to pick out the biggest number that is in both lists. Looks like 9 is the biggest number that are in both lists. So the greatest common factor equals 9. Now we have ones with letters. So letters are kind of different. With letters, you take out the smallest exponent. So in this case, the smallest exponent would be x to the second. So their greatest common factor would be x to the second. The next one has numbers and letters. So you could write the list for the 4. That would be 1 and 4, or 2 times 2. I'm going to write my list for 12. That would be 1 times 12. 2 times 6 gives me 12. 3 times 4 gives me 12. Alright, so we're finding the biggest number in both these lists. It looks like 4 is the biggest number in both lists. So our greatest common factor for this one would be 4 And you have to pick out the smallest exponent. So we're going to say 4x to the second would be the greatest common factor for that one. Alright, so like I said, we're kind of working backwards here. We're figuring out what can they both be divided by. Factoring is basically dividing polynomials. So we did practice dividing last chapter. It looked like this when we were doing our dividing. We told you what number to divide by. So for instance, this one we took 16 divided by 4 and got 4. We took 12 divided by 4 and got 3, and that's how our answers looked last chapter. So go ahead and try the next ones and we'll check your work. 15 divided by 5 is 3. And if you remember from last chapter, we also, when we divided these, we subtracted the exponents. So 5 minus 2 gives me t to the third. Bring down my minus. 5 divided by 5 is just 1. And 2 minus 2, there's no t's left with that. So this would just be the answer. Okay, this one, 81 divided by 9 is 9. We're subtracting these exponents. Remember these letters that don't have a number with them are just 1. So this would be a to the first power, and then no b's, because 1 minus 1 is 0, so there are no b's. After the plus sign, we have 27 divided by 9 is 3. 3 minus 3, there are no a's left, and 2 minus 1 is there is 1 b left. So now, last chapter we told you what to divide by. Today you're going to figure out what is the GCF. So you want to find the GCF. First. Then divide. Okay, so this one, they don't both have numbers, but they do both have the letter x. So we want to take out the smallest exponent. So they both, we'll say the GCF for this one is x to the second. That's the smallest exponent. So what you're doing is, like we did above, we're going to divide this one by x to the second, and we're going to divide that one by x to the second. So the GCF goes out front. And then you put a parenthesis. And in the parentheses is what you have left after you divide. So with dividing, we subtract exponents. So that's x to the second plus 9. 2 minus 2 is 0, so there's no x's left. So this whole thing is your answer. If you want to know if you got it right, you could just multiply it. X squared times x squared. And x squared times 9. It should come out to your original problem. Alright, this one has numbers and letters, so we're looking for a GCF for the numbers and the letters. So our GCF for this one, 2 and 8 can both be divided by 2, and the smallest exponent here is t to the second. So the GCF goes in front of the parenthesis, and then when you divide, what's left goes in your parenthesis. So 2 divided by 2 is 1. And the exponent 2 minus 2 is 0, so there's no t's left. I'm going to bring down my minus sign. Remember, I'm just dividing each of these by that GCF. So this one, 8 divided by 2 is 4, and 5 minus 2 is t to the third. So this whole thing represents the answer. You have to show the GCF, and you have to show what would be left if you divide it. This one, they all can be divided by the number 5, but they don't all have the letter A. So the only thing I can take out of this one is 5. I'm going to divide each of these by 5. So 15 divided by 5 is 3a squared. 10 divided by 5 is 2a. 25 divided by 5 is 5. Again, don't forget to include that GCF in front as part of your answer. This is called factoring. Factoring is a way to divide out what's called their greatest common factor in this case. So this one, 7, 9, and 11 can't be divided by anything. They don't have anything in common, but they do all have this letter A. Remember, this is the A to the first. So for this one, the smallest exponent is A to the first. So I'll put A to the first on the outside, which means if you take away an A from each of these, what would we have left? So we'd have a 7, and we would have 2 A's left. We'd have a 9, and 2 minus 1 means I have 1 A left. And on the exponents, 1 minus 1 means there's no A's left with the 11. So this whole thing is your answer, your GCF, and what you get after you divide. Well, this one looks a little more complex. We have numbers and we have letters, 2 different letters. So these can all be divided by 2, but the thing is, like, the number 12, you could say that's 1 and 12, 2 and 6, 3 times 4. And you have, like, the number 18. 18 has a lot, too. 1 times 18, 2 times 9, 3 times 6. And we have the number 24. 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, 4 times 6. Okay, so out of all those lists, they all have a 1, they all have a 2, they all have a 3. This one doesn't have a 4, so it's not going to be 4, but they all have the number 6. So 6 is the biggest number that divides into all of them. We're going to put a 6. And then, do they all have the letter X? Well, let's see. There's an X, there's an X, and that's an X with a 1. So, X to the first is the smallest one. They all have a letter Y, and Y to the 1 is the smallest Y. So, now you're going to divide each of these by 6, and you're going to subtract away that exponent. So, 12 divided by 6 is 2. 4 minus 1 means there are 3 x's left. 3 minus 1 means there are 2 y's left. 18 divided by 6 would be 3. 3 minus 1, there are 2 x's left. 1 minus 1 means there's no y's. Bring down your minus sign. And 4 divided by 6 is 4. On the x's, 1 minus 1 is 0. We have no x's. 2 minus 1 is 1. Alright, so when you get done with that whole thing, dividing out the biggest number and subtracting those exponents, what's left in this parenthesis should have nothing in common. They can't be divided by the same number. They don't all have the same letter. Nothing should be in common there. Alright, why don't you pause the video and try the next one on your own. Hopefully, welcome back. These numbers look like they can all be divided by 9. Okay? And I'm going to say this is the M2, M3, M4. So the smallest one is M2. N's, we have N4, N3, N2. So N2 was my smallest N's. Alright, so now we got to do the dividing and subtracting. 45 divided by 9 is 5. You take away 2 m's, there's no m's. Take away 2 n's, you have n squared. Bring down your plus sign. Then you go to the next number. 27 divided by 9 is 3. You take away 2 m's, we have just 1 left. Take away 2 n's, you have 1 left. Okay? Bring down your minus sign. Remember, you're just dividing each of these by that number that we said out front. So 18 divided by 9 is 2. There would be 2 m's left and no n's left at all. That whole thing is our answer. Again, if you want to check your work, you would multiply that to see if it makes the problem that we started with. Alright, grouping is another type of factoring that we do. factor by grouping is only used when we have 4 terms. You can start with 4 terms. You group the first 2 terms together, so you'll notice we added some parentheses in here around the first 2 and around the second 2. Now we're going to take out what they have in common. So this first one, a squared minus a, they can both have a in common. 6 and 24 can both be divided by 6. Once you take out what they have in common, these parentheses that are left should be the same. The matching binomial, factor out the matching binomial. So the first parenthesis, this a goes here, the 6 goes here, and the a minus 4 is what they have in common. So you should put that down next to it. Alright, so step 1, we're going to put parentheses around the first 2 and parentheses around the second 2. So just focus on just this part of the problem. What do those 2 things have in common? They both have a number 2 and they both have an x. So we're going to take out a 2x. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, and x2, and this is an x1, leaves us with 1x. Bring down your plus sign. 2 divided by 2 is 1, and x minus x, there's no x's left. Then you look at the second parentheses. Now I'm going to cover up that side of the problem. Okay, what do these 2 things have in common? Looks like they both have a number 5, so I'm going to factor out the number 5. So I'll bring down the sign that was between them, plus 5. And then 5 divided by 5 just leaves me with x, or 1x, and 5 divided by 5 is 1. If you factor these correctly, these 2 parentheses will have the same thing. So now you take what's in front, and you make a parenthesis. So 2x plus 5, and then you bring down the one that they had in common, x plus 1. So those 2 parentheses are your answer. If you multiplied that out, again, you would get the problem that we started with. Factoring is dividing out GCF, okay, or taking out what they have in common here. Let's look at the next one. We're going to group the first 2 and group the second 2. Well, I can put it here, I guess. So these can both be divided by a 3 and a y. So let's divide them each by 3y. 3 divided by 3 is 1. If you take away one of the y's, you should have a y left. Bring down your plus sign. 18 divided by 3 is 6, and there would be no y's left. This one was a minus sign, so I'm going to put a minus sign there. These can both be divided by a 4. So if you divide by negative 4 here, you just have y. Negative 24 divided by negative 4 is positive 6. You'll notice, after I took out those GCFs, my parentheses are the same. So my answer is 3y minus 4 and y plus 6. Alright, let's try the next one. Group the first 2, group the second 2. These don't have any numbers in common, but they do both have the letter A. So we'll take out an A. So if you take away one of the A's, we just have 4A minus 3. I'm going to bring down my plus sign here. These 2 still can't be divided by any numbers, and they have no letters in common. So we're just going to take out a 1. When you divide both of those by 1, they just stay the same. And that's okay, because if you look at this problem now, this parenthesis is the same as that parenthesis. So you take the numbers in front, and that becomes your first parenthesis. I would suggest pausing the video now and trying the next 3 on your own, and then come back and check your work. Theirs can't be divided by 2, but they do both have a y. So we'll take out a y. bring down that minus sign. What can 12 and 30 be divided by? I think 12 and 30 can be divided by 6. So I'm going to take out a negative 6 because we want to take out that sign that's there. So negative 12 divided by negative 6 is positive 2y. Negative 30 divided by negative 6 is positive 5. Again, I know I was on the right track because my two parentheses came out exactly the same. So your answer is to write things at the beginning, y minus 6 times 2y plus 5. Your answer is both parentheses. Okay, these both have a letter G. I took the G away. Then I'm going to bring down the plus sign. 40 and 20 can both be divided by 4. So we're going to take out a 4. That is F minus 5. Because 20 divided by 4 is 5. You can see our parentheses are the same, so my answer is G plus 4 and F minus 5. Again, the G plus 4 is become from the G here and the plus 4 there. That's where the first parenthesis comes from. I did it right because I got matching parentheses. Okay. 16 and 8 can both be divided by 8, and they both have a letter X. So 16 divided by 8 is 2. There'd be 1 X left. 8 divided by 8 gives me 1, and there'd be no X's left. Bring down your plus sign. 6 and 3 can both be divided by 3. So I'm going to say 3 parentheses. 6 divided by 3 is 2. X. 3 divided by 3 is 1. Again, we know we did it right because our parentheses came out the same. So you take the numbers in front and they become your first parentheses. Is the full answer. Both parentheses count as the answer. So working on greatest common factors and factor by grouping. Factor by grouping is done when you have 4 terms and you